I was working in my studio at my home, and I outgrew it. The paintings became much larger than the studio space. I started working on the roof of the house, laying out these hammock pieces, and realized pretty soon that I needed a space to work in. So I found this space and converted it into a studio to work in a space that felt like a real studio, where real investigation happens. I think about the hammock as a temporary bed, as a thing to sleep in that you can put away. A little bit like my travels, I put things away and I leave and come back. So there's this malleability that the work is about. I work on the floor because of gravity. The hammock will stay in a position that it won't stay if it were vertical or hanging. In order for the paint to dry, it kind of needs this stable environment. They hang vertically on the wall so that a lot of what you see that's not attached to the paint really becomes part of the drapery in the piece. I thought of the hammock as a piece of furniture. The most basic piece of furniture in the way a Turkish carpet is a piece of furniture. A hammock is a bed in the Yucatan. It deserved some investigation. This material that's been around for 1,000 years, it's how the Yucatecans sleep. The hammocks are woven at stand-up looms in people's homes. It's very much an artisanal process. And I've visited a lot of the villages where these are made. And so I bring these hammocks back to the studio, and I use them as the foundation for paintings. A large part of the work is about the process of the paint. It's this process of turning the hammock into a painting. The structure of the hammock is held to place by the paint itself. A canvas typically holds the paint on its surface. But in this case, the painting holds the hammock together and becomes a painting. It subverts the idea of what a painting is and kind of flips it upside down. Without the paint itself, the hammock hanging on the wall would be nothing but draped threads. But suddenly, the introduction of paint allows this to go from a woven material to more of an object. It in itself is a form of metamorphosis. There's a process of discovery that happens between the space of working on the floor, because I work upside down, so I really have to think backwards about how the work's going to manifest itself, because they get pulled from the floor, and what I'm seeing is what becomes the back of the painting. So I love that moment of it coming off the floor. For me, that's what keeps me coming into the studio, having this discovery, this feeling of not always being in control. That is really important to me, this sense of chance. I'm also thinking about the context of where the exhibition is. Right across the street from Casa Luis Barragan. He looked at the vernacular in the haciendas. He combined that with really simple volumes, with simple planes. What he's recognized for is his introduction to vivid colors within the walls of the architecture. I wanted to investigate Luis Barragan in a deeper sense. Being a colorist myself, I thought, well, why don't I limit my palette to how maybe Luis Barragan saw the world and how he saw the world in the context of his architecture. So I started focusing on the colors that I saw in his architecture, certainly the bright yellow and that very specific pink. I'm working with that color palette largely through the investigation of Luis Barragan's architecture. how we use color to play with space. And I'm interested in the drapery, how it relates art historically to sculpture made in the 15th century, the 14th century. Why does somebody want to create this drapery effect in a material as hard and as solid as marble? I'm kind of playing with that idea and utilizing drapery in the work to acknowledge that I'm participating in the history of art through this work. And I think about Buckminster Fuller and his experiments with geodesic dome and playing with how structure held together. And in a way, this is playing with structure, but using paint as the mechanism to hold that woven structure in place. So it's painting, it's structure, it's textile, but really I'm interested in the outcome being a painting. As the work's developed, I'm thinking about this idea of weightlessness that the hammock provokes. And so I started to think about things in nature that had this weightless quality. And I thought about the butterfly, of having a weightless quality, of how it flies, how it lands, how it flitters through the space. I kind of asked myself, could I make paintings that have some conversation with the butterfly and still use the hammock as the foundation for this work? They become basically two wings with the center shaft held together by the hammock. Its woven components reach out into the painting, hold the paint in place. They're basically like a diptych, but you have flexibility within that diptych in terms of how they're hung, how they're displayed, how they interact with one another. The thing with this new series, too, that I really like is the idea of metamorphosis. The butterfly takes this migratory path from Mexico north and through where I see them, where I live in North Carolina, up into the forest in Canada. They become a chrysalis, and yet they somehow remember this migratory path. It relates to me crossing these borders, crossing these boundaries, and going through my own metamorphosis in that process. For me, this work has come full circle. It's something I want to continue to investigate. I think of myself as a pollinator. What is it to be involved in the arts, to make art, to collect art? And it's to be a part of a process where you pollinate. You land on things and somehow bring some degree of importance to them just by landing on them. Because what you take from it lands on the next place. It becomes something, it grows into a flower.